Broadcasting from the studios of Business RadioX, it's time for Advisory Insights, brought to you by Oberman Law Firm, serving clients nationwide with tailored service and exceptional results. Now, here's your host.
And welcome everyone to Advisory Insights. Stuart Oberman here, your host. All right, folks, we're going to talk about employer-related compliance trends in 2023. Yes, 2023 off and running. There's a lot of things going on in 2023 that our employers must know. There's not necessarily any order of priority here, but there is a great trends regarding pay transparency laws that are going to be even more expansive in the future. So the laws generally require, this is overly broad here, employers to include salary range information in job postings. Now, this is cropped up in California, of course, Washington, and New York. But I will tell you, there's a lot of other legislation that is pending or being discussed in multiple states. So I think what has to happen is if you're an employer and you got employees in those states and you're posting jobs in those states, you got to understand what the ramifications are of the pay transparency laws. I would suggest that you have a broad policy on this because it is not really a matter of if it comes to your state, is when. So obviously, California, Washington, and New York are more of the liberal states. Again, I'm not getting into politics, but I see a trend here that's already from west to east. And again, it's going to go north and it's going south. So it's just a matter of time. A next big topic, which of course originates in some more of these states, is employee privacy. What we're seeing is that, and California is really at the forefront of this, but Illinois even became first on this issue. So recently, California Privacy Rights Act has really brought, in my opinion, employee privacy to the forefront in the U.S. So the law became effective January 1st. Now, the interesting part, you got to go back in history a little bit, and I don't want to bore you guys. This particular law actually follows the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, which was enacted in 2008 in Illinois. Now, you got to understand where all this is coming from, okay? So under the California law, again, here we go. We're in California, Washington. Now we're hitting Midwest. We got the New York City going here. So what the California mandate does, again, this is going to be propping up in multiple states, in my opinion. So the California law mandates, not says may or not says, we really wanted to. It mandates. It governs how the aspect of the employee and employment relationship and how data is used in this context. Now, what does that mean? So it actually outlines what employers in artificial intelligence can and cannot utilize that information on. And privacy, background checks, those kind of things. So I think you need to really have a plan as a whole. It doesn't matter whether you're in Illinois, California, Washington. I don't really care. You got to figure out what your policy is and procedures on how to handle this data and whether or not your policies and procedures fit within those 4 or 5 states that is very broad. And especially if you have employees in those multiple states and you're a multinational employer, how do you deal with, if your main office is in Charlotte, how do you deal with an employee and you run background checks for employees in Washington, New York? How do you deal with that? You got to have policy in place with that. Next one really is a very, very aggressive legislative change, and we're seeing more and more of this. And I think it's just a matter of time before the states have a version of this, which was employee leave. I think we're going to see not necessarily on a federal level, but we're going to see employers, continue to see some broad movement on paid leave on a state and local level. So again, I want to go back to Illinois because they see the most recent here, what we're looking at. So they passed the Paid Leave Act for all workers. The official name, Paid Leave for All Workers Act, January 10th. Now, once the law takes effect, and there's a question whether that takes effect, from all indication, it's going to take effect next year. Employers, get this, must annually provide covered employees up to 40 hours of paid leave, which they can use for any purpose. Folks, you got to understand the ramifications of that. Okay? Again, if you're a multinational employer. Now, what we're going to see, I believe, different versions of this trickle down in certain watered down states where it may not be as aggressive, or in some areas, depending on the legislation, you're going to see more aggressive leave. So I think you need to start looking now what your policies are and procedures. So we have had some cases that our employers have actually acquired companies, and deep in their particular HR matters, they did not realize that their companies that they acquired had no limitation on leave. Folks, you understand that? You just purchased a $50 million business, okay? 5 million, 10 million, million, I don't really care. And all of a sudden in their policy that you inherited and you got to deal with, it says that their leave of absence is unlimited. How do you deal with that? First of all, how do you miss that? A lot of things go into that scenario. Next, we've talked about this on our 2 previous podcasts, non-competes. So I don't want to belabor this. I think it's a trend. The FTC, has issued a proposed ban, which is under a lot of review, for non-competes. So if that occurs, that will fundamentally change the relationship on current employees and future employees as far as what you can and cannot enforce. Folks, that is just about 4 or so topics that are really the hot topics right now going in 2023. And I'm telling you, I'm sure there's going to be offshoots, extensions, reductions of these various policies and procedures under state, federal, and even national level. So keep track of what's going on. Keep listening to our podcast. Folks, thanks for joining us today. Advisory Insights, Stuart Oberman, your host. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call, 770-886-2400, or Stuart at obermanlaw.com. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you for joining us on Advisory Insights. This show is brought to you by Oberman Law Firm, a business-centric law firm representing local, regional, and national clients in a wide range of practice areas, including healthcare, mergers and acquisitions, corporate transactions, and regulatory compliance.